I tried to walk quickly without appearing to. I had 20 minutes left to get to Patintu station, and it was going well, until I came upon 5 or 6 white men with raggedy beards and scabrous chests. As they were playing dominoes underneath a baobab tree at night, they were obviously free men, and I could see that they had the feral awareness of most free whites, alert to their surroundings, ready to slip out of view down a passage or get lost in a crowd to avoid confrontation or danger. As I suspected they would, they all looked up. Whites always clocked one another when out and about. It was a kind of minority awareness thing. I tried hard not to panic, but the parameters of my life were suddenly changing. I was in no man's land. I was escaping slavery and walking towards freedom, but I had not yet arrived. Of one thing I was now sure. When I had left my master's compound, I had lost his protection, which meant I couldn't pretend I hadn't seen the men, as usual. For those of us who were still enslaved, the small communities of free whites were either objects of pity, many were desperate scavengers, or envy. This surprised me too when I'd first arrived in Great Ambossa, that those slaves who were freed, for one reason or another, could remain in the country, although many Ambossans lobbied to get them kicked out. The free whites were mainly consigned to living in squalor, in communal tents in tumble-down ghettos on the outskirts of the large cities, derisively referred to by the rich Ambossans as the vanilla suburbs, quite distinct from the far superior cocoa palmed avenues of their own chocolate cities. We heard that in the suburbs you could buy the traditional costume of many nations, such as sporrans, knickerbockers, leather jerkins, peasant skirts, metal helmets with horns, chainmail tunics, boleros, trailing gowns with fur collars, bodices which reduced your waist to 18 inches, and bustles which expanded your hips to a hefty size 80. In the burbs there were hooch and grog dens, magical boy bands, recorder recitals, and even civil rights protest singers. There were also white hairdressers who sold thin-toothed combs for our unmanageable flyaway fine hair. In the burbs, you rarely saw a free white with natural hair. They wore the perms, twists and braids of Mbossan women, although afros were most in demand. The hairdressers used kinky African hair on the Burbite women, who had their own fine hair chopped off and these bushy pieces sewn onto them, so that the effect was unnaturally African. It took up to 10 hours, and when the blonde, red, brown or straight roots came through, it looked just plain tacky, apparently. Our men used to joke that if you ran your fingers through a white woman's hair, chance was it would come off in your hands. You'd see clumps of kinky hair littering the streets like black sheep's wool. In the burbs, tanning was all the rage too, and you could get a nose flattening job done quite cheaply, we heard. Although I always thought that flat, fat nostrils and white faces looked ridiculous. The very thought of a mallet smashing down on my nose was just too scary for words. Most importantly, the burbs sold exotic European food, unattainable elsewhere. You could get Brussels sprouts, cucumber, lettuce, peas, tapioca pudding, lemonade, processed white bread, even cabbage. My mouth used to water at the very thought of all that lovely plain food without any horrid peppers and spices. The burbs were out of bounds to the likes of me, of course, but I used to dream of wandering around the legendary brick starn in the south of the city, or Toten Hama in the east, which had originally been settled by Chinese seamen. I prayed those white men wouldn't follow me. As a single white female, I was often sought after by my own men, who found my bony size 4 figure attractive. A prominent clavicle, corrugated chest bones, concave stomach, and thin blonde hair were considered the embodiment of beauty in Europa, even though the Embossans considered me ugly as sin. And as it was their world I was living in, I had image issues, of course. Every morning I'd repeat an uplifting mantra to myself while looking in the mirror. I try not to see the pinched nostrils, pasty skin, greasy hair, pale shifty eyes and flat bottom which the Embossans labelled inferior. Instead, I try to say with confidence, I may be fair and flaxen, I may have slim nostrils and slender lips, I may have oil-rich hair and a non-rotund bottom, I may blush easily, go rubicund in the sun, and have covert yet mentally alert blue eyes. Yes, I may be white, but I am white, and I am beautiful.